Hey, it's Bruce coming to you once again from WeedersDigest.com. And by now you've probably seen one of the most phenomenal products out there for managing your lakeshore, your beach, your swimming area. It's the WeedRoller. But the fact that you're here today is something that I'm assuming you're looking to learn a little bit more about the WeedRoller and what it can do for you on your shoreline. And the goal of this video is really to kind of walk you through not really the selling points of the WeedRoller as much as just kind of help you walk through some of the details that you're going to need to know before you place an order. And so if you follow this video through at the very end, we'll basically have a checklist to walk you through those very specific questions that you're going to need to ask yourself before we actually write the order. So let me walk you through this. Alright, now the most common application for the WeedRoller is to be mounted next to a dock. And I would say that, probably 80 to 90% of the applications are just as you see it right here. Mounted on the end of the dock or mounted on the side of a dock, whatever the case might be. And you see the pole that goes, you've got your standard dock pole, and then you've got the WeedRoller, and then this is the mounting bracket. And so it comes standard with two brackets. And so that's the most common way. This allows you to mount it to a dock or to a seawall, a floating pier, or another option that we can discuss in another video is using our tripod. So a tripod allows you to make it completely freestanding, not connected to a dock. Now, one thing that you need to also think about is the maximum water depth where the drive head will be. So in other words, this has to be within 4.5 feet of water. If you're going to need to be in deeper water, as you can see right here, this is only probably about 2 feet of water. But if you're going to be in deeper water than that, then you're going to need one of our extension kits. Extension kit basically extends these two components and causes the WeedRoller to be 2.5 feet taller, and thus be able to go out in about 7 feet of water. Now the other question to ask is, how far is the power head, or out here, how far is that going to be before it gets to dry land? Because we have a 70-foot power cord that runs up to what I call the green box, and that basically is a power converter that reduces it down to lower voltage when it's out on the dock. And this is very critical for safety, that you want to have the green box. It's got a stake, and you can just basically put pressure on the top and just drive it right down in the sand or in the grass or whatever the case might be. We highly recommend that you, I should say highly recommend, the only way that I would ever install a unit like this is with the ground fault interrupter, a GFI. If you need more information on that, certainly let us know. Now the other question would be, do you want to have more than a 21-foot roller? So it comes standard with a 21-foot. That's 3 7-foot rollers, and you can certainly add additional 7-foot extensions. Most common is, well, it comes standard 21. It's very common to see people go to a 28. A little bit less likely to go to a 35. In fact, I would say about 50% of the people go to a 28. 25% of the people go to a 35, and 25% probably people keep it at a standard 21 foot. Now the next thing is that if you've got a lot of contour changes in your water, you want to add, well, it will come with a flex coupler. Basically what that is kind of a rubber boot between the rollers, and so you get one with it, and usually that's adequate, but you can add another. Now as it rolls back and forth, that just allows a little bit more flexibility in the what otherwise would be the very rigid 7-foot, or I should say 21-foot tubes. And so the one thing to keep in mind there is that it's going to come, there's going to be flexibility right off the power head, but this will give you option to have even more. Now this is another option, and we really prefer that we get a chance to talk with you a little bit about this, is that how soft is the bottom of the lake that the WeedRoller is going to be running. This is what we call our optional mud kit, and a mud kit, it's less than $100. Alright, so as we kind of reach part 2 discussing the weed roller from, of course, weedersdigest.com, we're just basically walking through the details that you need to think about before you make a purchase. These are all things that we're more than happy to go through with you on the phone, but sometimes it's nice to have a visualization as you're preparing for that discussion, because this really comes down to determining what options you would need in purchasing your weed roller. So we've already talked about the water depth, and we've talked about the length of the cord, mounting devices. Now we're talking about the need for to build traction. And the thing you need to think about most is that the weed roller works on traction. So this is what we call the mud kit. It is an optional item. It does not come standard with the weed roller. And this, the best way to say it is this is like a claw. And that claw, as it traverses around, as the weed roller traverses around, that just gives you the ability to bite in more to the muck. And the weed rollers does a phenomenal job in the muck, but we really want to talk to you before you make your purchase to determine what options you're going to need. And maybe even more importantly, not so much options that you have to purchase, but more the tips and the tricks that we're going to share with you to make sure that you get through some of those initial, what might be only a few hours or might be even days or even weeks, to get through the heavy layers of muck. And so the mud kit again is just basically 2 bolts, one there and one down below, and they are hooking it up for the mud kit. We do have some other options for that as well. So basically, as we look at these options of what you need, now the other thing is that on the power cord, we didn't touch on this necessarily before, but it does come with the 70 feet of power cord, but you can add more if you'd like. You need to just purchase up to a 70-foot or a 25-foot additional cord. Now, in adding additional rollers, a couple things that we sometimes offer is not only just the flex coupler that we talked about here, but you can see in this case we've actually mounted a board, and that can be anything. I recommend like a 1x6 that you mount to the fins, because it's the fins that are doing the phenomenal job. We've covered that in another video. But it's the fins that are doing the job to build traction, and traction is how it operates. So you could just mount a board like you see here. There you get a good view of it right there, and that shows you that you can get more traction out of it, because the weed roller is going to only work based on its traction. Now there's another option, is that we can reduce the plugs, and well, we'll come back to that in another one. So again, I'm going to just go through the questions that you need to ask, or that we need to ask you. Is if you're in Minnesota, you may need to have a permit. What is the water depth? Remember we discussed that if it's less than 4.5 feet, you're good. Otherwise, we're going to have to add an extension. Where and how will you mount it? Will you need additional mounting material or a tripod? How long of a power cord are you going to need to reach dry land? And do you have a ground fault interrupter from a safety standpoint? And do you want it longer than 21 feet? How deep is the muck you're working with? Are you going to need a mud kit? And also, will you need or would you want to have us walk you through that board idea? And do you have any water movement in your area? That's one thing that we like to discuss just from a tip. And then it comes right down, if we've answered all your questions, how soon do you want us to ship one out to you? We've always got them in stock. We're always able to ship them out the same day. So give us a call. This has been a phenomenal time to just walk you through the different details of the weed roller from WeedersDigest.com. And we also have another website that's designed specifically to the weed roller, and that would be www.weedroller.mn for Minnesota. That's www.weedroller.mn. And with that, I thank you for taking a look at the Weeder's Digest Weed Roller, and I encourage you to give us a call at 877-224-4899, or just visit us online at weedersdigest.com.